Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian. And earlier this week, I injected myself with some of that new Josh. Since then, all I do is sit around the house in sweatpants and watch erotic wizard porn.
Hey, sounds like fun, really. I feel like that's redundant. I mean, is there wizard porn that's not?
Well, I mean, it just really depends how into the scene these wizards are getting, so.
Sure. Well, appropriately enough, Jason's a bit under the weather, and this episode is really the right episode for that.
Building this is character development for an awesome movie here.
Because this season we are talking about the films of 2012, and we're here at our first feature episode, and we are talking about director Brandon Cronenberg's film Antiviral, which is all about people getting sick on purpose. So sort of, I mean, I don't know if we could call this film prescient in some way. Nobody's actually injecting themselves with celebrities' viruses yet, but I feel like we're closer to it maybe than we were in 2012.
Josh, I feel like that we timed this out pretty perfectly by accident because at the time of recording, Cronenberg's latest movie, Infinity Pool, just played at Sundance.
Yes, it did. It played at Sundance and is out in theaters. So when we were looking at what to talk about for this episode, because 2012 is so recent, it was a bit hard to judge who made a debut in 2012 and has gone on to really have a major career. And it's still maybe slightly premature to say this about Brandon Cronenberg, but he's now got 3 films that I think all have their merits that we'll talk about. But regardless of our opinions of them, have all certainly reached an audience and gained him a building following over the past a little over a decade.
He is yet to foray into the world of wizard pornography, but we'll see where the next 10 years go for him.
Yeah, I think of all the debut filmmakers that we've covered, he's perhaps the most likely to go in that direction.
Yeah, except there would be like one wizard splitting another wizard's head open in a very graphic formation before the wizard sticks his penis right inside of the skull wound and everything. Anyway,
Jason's just going for it.
Tell me that's not something Brandon Cronenberg would do. And we can start with it here on Antiviral, or Antiviral, if you will, where you do see a lot of graphic, gnarly stuff like that.
You do indeed. This is a very disgusting movie at times. I looked away in occasional moments. There's a lot of, I don't have problems with like lots of blood and guts, but if there are close-ups of needles going into skin, even if it's just to like take a blood test or something, I can't watch that. So there were moments of this movie that I had to look
I was surprised because, I know you don't like bodily functions in films. And this is like really, really in your face, like bleeding and pussy stuff and just type of gross things that I don't want to see. I mean, I respect the body and all of its functions, but I didn't need to see it as close up as Cronenberg made it. So I thought that might have turned you off from the film.
Yeah, it varies. But there's not, I guess what I don't like seeing is a lot of bathroom bodily functions, let's say. So that's not where this movie is going, per se. So I guess it didn't bother me. Like I said, in this movie, really the only stuff that I had to look away from was the needles going into skin, which I can never watch, even in non-horror movies when people are using drugs or going to the doctor or whatever. If they show that, I can't do it.
What about in real life when you have to go to the doctor?
Oh, yeah, that's a definite problem for me. I definitely have difficulty with that. It's no good. Anyway, learning so much in this episode. Antiviral premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in 2012 in the Un Certain Regard section and was then edited slightly. Brandon Cronenberg edited 6 minutes out of this film before it then played at the Toronto Film Festival in 2012, where it won the Best Canadian First Feature Award, which is a very specific award. And I have to wonder how much competition there was for that.
I feel like that's really just like, hey, can we give a Cronenberg an award at this film festival here?
Although I think it is an award that they give out regularly. So maybe there's at least one candidate for it every year.
All you need is one, buddy.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So it was released later in the US in 2013 in a wider commercial release and grossed $123,000 approx worldwide on its budget, according to Wikipedia, of 3.3 million Canadian dollars. So I'm not sure how many American dollars that is.
Let's find out right now. No, so are you saying it was loonies?
No, I think loonies are $2 bills in Canada. So it was so that would be only like 1.6 million loonies.
Wow, you did a lot of math. It's about $2,477,803.35. About that, Josh.
Okay. And that's at the current exchange rate. We don't know what the exchange rate was in 2012.
So it would be really 2013, like you said. So.
Yeah, but it could be slightly more or slightly less than that. The point is, it obviously did not make its budget back at the box office. So this was not a movie that was a big hit, although it did get a good amount of attention, I think, just because Brandon Cronenberg is, of course, the son of David Cronenberg. And those kinds of things always get a bit of attention. But maybe because it wasn't a huge hit, that was one of the reasons why it took a little while for Cronenberg to make another film. And it got kind of mixed reviews from critics. So Megan Lehman in The Hollywood Reporter said, if imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, David Cronenberg should be feeling pretty chuffed with son Brandon's big screen debut, a petri dish of high concept perversity and cultural commentary teeming with lo-fi ickiness. Clearly weaned on Dad's early body horror films, such as Shivers and Scanners, the 32-year-old Canadian writer-director gives a sardonic, Cronenbergian twist to a very au courant subject, the sickness of celebrity worship. It's a topic ripe with potential, and the younger Cronenberg takes off down some gratifyingly weird alleys as he follows the travails of a young man peddling the viruses of ill celebrities to obsessed fans.
Yeah, so I mean, that was really, it's almost impossible to watch it and not be like, it was almost a surprise that, this is the child of the son of a very famous director, right? And, to do something so much in when you're trying to get out of that shadow, you would think he might do like wacky comedies or like romance or something. But he basically was like, hey, Dad, do you have any screenplays that you have unproduced? No? Okay, I'll write one. You don't want to make it? Cool, I'll make it then.
Yeah, we have previously covered a parent-child pairing in Francis Ford Coppola and Sofia Coppola, and they definitely have very distinctly different styles, I would say. But the Cronenbergs here certainly are very similar. And it's not like Brandon just did this as a debut. I mean, he's only made 3 films so far, but all 3 of his films very much are indebted to the works of his father.
Yes, although I will say they use more gels, more colorful gels.
Yes, that I suppose is true.
He loves the gels.
And still, I think he obviously for a debut, there was a lot of focus on his parentage, but I think still in reviews of his film just recently, people still end up focusing.
Yeah, no, it's funny because it's like, a lot of in other businesses, right? Like, oh, Jim's going to take over the family restaurant or whatnot, right? You don't have that here. Or like Johnny's going to take over the hardware store, whatever. We don't have like David Cronenberg going like, Brandon's going to take over the old trade in crazy messed up movies.
Right. Well, but he has anyway. That's really what he's done. So Gary Goldstein in the Los Angeles Times said, even if the horror thriller Antiviral wasn't written and directed by David Cronenberg's son, Brandon, this meat locker of a movie might still invite comparisons to much of the elder filmmaker's signature output. Cronenberg opts for style over substance throughout, filling his debut feature with surface characters, hazy narrative rules, icy white-on-white set design, and shots so precisely composed they look feng shuied. Even the picture's selective gore, fetishistic close-ups of needle injections aside, feels overly studied. Still, Antiviral is often fascinating to watch. if Cronenberg's not yet a dead ringer for his iconic dad, he's taken an intriguing first step.
I agree with that it did feel like a lot of what did he say? Sizzle over substance, or
style over substance. Yeah.
Sizzle over steak, so to speak. I mean, to the point where like I was like, okay, dude, I get it. You got to give me something else here to keep me involved, which is a trend that I've come back to in his later films as well.
Yeah, I do think he establishes a particular tone and a particular approach and just kind of locks that in for the entire movie. I felt like it was interesting enough, and the world that he created had enough quirks to it that I was pretty well held for the majority of the film. But it does feel like it could be tighter. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little more, but as this is a first feature and you think, okay, he's going to kind of refine things, and he does in a way, but also
doubles down on all of it.
Pretty similar approaches, in the later films. And I mean, it's good that he cut 6 minutes out of this. I don't think I would have wanted this to be 6 minutes longer, but he probably could have cut at least 6 more minutes out of it somewhere in there.
Yeah. And so, Josh, for preparation, we watched this. I watched Possessor, which I know you've seen already. We all watched Infinity Pool this week. And then you and I also watched the short film, Please Speak Clearly. What is it called?
Please Speak Continuously and Describe Your Experiences as They Come to You.
It could have just been called Another Dream.
Yeah, I mean, you watch all of those and, he's got a very clear style. And David Cronenberg, as much as he has a certain distinctive style and kind of narrative interest, over time, he's made a pretty wide variety of films. And Brandon is not there yet, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like a bit unfair because Cronenberg David has decades and decades of filmmaking, but it's right. You don't watch this and you're like, oh, Eastern Promises is in this guy's future or anything like that.
Right. But it could be something like that. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, at this point, everyone is just kind of pointing out the promise, I think, mainly. So Noel Murray in the AV Club said, for all its preoccupation with disease, Antiviral isn't especially visceral. The movie can be repulsive at times, but Cronenberg is more interested in ideas than in blood and guts. Still, those ideas are something. Antiviral is oddly lacking in urgency for a movie about dying people and the corporate raiders looking to exploit them, but it's rarely tedious, because Cronenberg keeps coming up with clever new details of Antiviral's milieu. Cronenberg doesn't say anything too profound about a culture of celebrity obsession, but Antiviral does develop an eerie beauty, as its characters ruminate on how decay gives everything from flowers to human faces their unique, often enviable qualities.
Yeah, I know Cronenberg says, in like worlds like sci-fi worlds, you don't have to and don't necessarily want to give all the details because you want to leave some up to the viewers, or maybe you don't want to just pound it out if it holds back the storytelling. But I think we could have used a few more details on the celebrity obsession and how these celebrities have struck these deals with these companies to like build these cell trees out of them. And I think there were a few missing elements that could have grounded this a little more.
Yeah, maybe so. But I am generally in agreement with him that oftentimes the more you explain these things, the less interesting they become.
I agree also, but I just felt like this one needed a few little pieces to bolt it down for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And I think this is a movie where, I mean, at least for me, even though it's relatively straightforward when you kind of boil it down, but he really drops you right into that world at the very beginning of the film. And it did take me a while to get a handle on like, okay, what is happening? What are these people doing? What is this company and what are they offering to customers and things like that? And so I kind of like that feeling though, because it's like, he's not holding your hand. And I think in all of his films, he puts you down in a world that looks kind of just like the present. And then it's just a matter of fact thing that like, oh, by the way, also this crazy ass thing is happening.
Yeah. And there are more gels.
Yeah, you really not as much in this movie though. I think in Possessor and Infinity Pool, but less so here. This is really
and in the short
antiseptic. Yeah, in the short film too. Yeah, but here it's really that antiseptic, very clean white,
sterile,
sterile future kind of look.
Yeah.
So Jason, you just had a crash course in Brandon Cronenberg here this week.
Yeah, I had never seen any of his stuff. So that was good. Like, I mean, it's cool that we get to do that and just dig in deep, right? So
right.
I like Possessor the best out of the bunch. And I know Dave is just like building his own cell tree of infinity pools over there just because he loved it so much. But I felt a lot of the films had the same flaws, and Possessor was able to overcome it a little more. And we will talk more about those flaws here in Antiviral.
Yes. I had seen Possessor and liked it a lot. And of course, watched Infinity Pool just this week because it just came out this week. But this one I had not seen. And I was excited, especially because this is the only movie that we're talking about this season that I had never seen before. So it was cool to get to see something new here, which is always fun. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, I don't disagree with you about any of your criticisms here, but I think this is just kind of, I love David Cronenberg, and this is kind of my jam in a way because David Cronenberg has sort of changed things up a lot, especially in the later part of his career. It was like, oh, here's a version of the early Cronenberg film that now is being made by Cronenberg Jr. here. And I kind of like that.
Dave?
So yeah, Dave, had you seen this one?
I did. Actually, went back and watched it after Josh and I covered Possessor on piecing it together. I went back and watched Antiviral, and I liked it then, but I think I was very confused by a lot of it, and I liked it a lot more this time. To me, that and Possessor are like they're on even ground. And as you said, yes, I'm in love with Infinity Pool. I just think it's so great, and I know there's a lot of criticisms about it. We'll get into that later, I'm sure, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah. I'm with Jason. I think Possessor is the best of the three, but I think they're all pretty close and make me curious to see where else things are going to go for him.
I agree that they're all pretty close, and I'm not saying that in a good way.
All right. Is there anything else on the background of Antiviral that you want
to pretty cool, Josh. In 2012, you mentioned this played the Cannes Film Festival. Also that year, David Cronenberg's movie Cosmopolis was in there.
Yeah, Cosmopolis also featuring Sarah Gadon from this film. So a lot of crossover there.
What a year for Sarah Gadon. I wonder if they gave her an award at the Toronto Film Festival.
They should have. She's a Canadian icon. So we'll come back then in a moment and talk more of our general thoughts on Antiviral. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2012, we are talking about our first feature pick, which is Brandon Cronenberg's Antiviral. And Jason, it seems like you couldn't quite fully get into it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I think I would say the same thing with Infinity Pool. Also, I like, the premise starts and you're like, oh, this is interesting. This is unique. Let's see where it goes. And then it just doesn't get to that next level. There's no quote unquote reversal, which there doesn't have to be, but there just has to be something else. And then when they do a reveal later in this movie, it's a very heavy-handed, murky reveal, which is the Hannah character who we all think is dead, and that's the one they've been harvesting is really not dead, but she's almost dead, so we have to still fix her. And it's like, well, that's just clunky right there. There's nothing that elevates this. If anything, that's just brings this down.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like this was heavy-handed. That plot reveal is kind of basic. I mean, it's the sort of plot reveal that you would expect to happen, but I didn't think it was heavy-handed per se. And given that this is a movie too that is making this comment on celebrity culture, it could have been a lot more heavy-handed. I think in a way, one of the things, when you're saying you wanted more explanation of this world, that could have been a way, if he'd added more of that, it could have come off as a lot more obvious and heavy-handed in that here we're talking about celebrity worship or reality TV or whatever. We never find out why any of these people are famous. Are they actually actors or musicians, or they're just reality stars or what? And I think it's okay to just sort of leave all that to the imagination.
I was actually more interested with that kind of weird B plot where there's a deli, I guess, where they're harvesting sell meat, would you call it, of these celebrities, and people are buying like Hannah Geist steaks or something like that. And then that took you into that world of like that underground, like black market of like virus trading or whatnot. I thought there was more there that could have been explored, and the way they did explore it, it just didn't do enough for me there.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting world. The idea that, I mean, it's not that far off from what we have now, where companies are trying to grow sort of steaks or whatever from animal cells so that we don't have to kill actual animals. And it's just taken to the level where they're growing these from human cells and then selling them for people to eat. And I wonder, I mean, in reality, if we perfect this process with animals, would someone start doing it with humans, whether it's celebrities or just humans in general? Because I just feel like it's something that would, some sicko is going to do it.
To eat, is that what you mean?
Yeah, to eat, like to be like a way is like, oh, here's a way to be a cannibal without having to kill an actual person.
Right, right. And then people will use that. I mean, see, that's where you get into that, like, and that could be an interesting field to mine also for, stories of like, well, would you rather they just kill real people, bones and all, or
right. Yeah.
And more so than just straight up cannibalism. I mean, it's about consuming celebrities as much as you possibly can to the point of actually eating them. And
right.
Yeah, it feels like people would want that.
I think so. And I think you're right, Jason, that there's like more to it there that we could have delved into.
Right. And that, and that's really, like I said, a B story. This is all about infecting yourself with the illnesses or viruses or diseases that these celebrities have. And Josh, you were saying it didn't matter to you that you didn't get a little more into that psyche. But I mean, like, I've seen Bruce Springsteen in concert over 50 times, maybe 60. But if he got really sick, I don't think I would inject myself with whatever he had. You know what I mean? Like that seems like I need a little more to understand the psyche of the people who do that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I feel like I too would not do that. As we were just talking about, I'm very cautious at avoiding illness. Certainly would not deliberately infect myself, even if it came from a celebrity. But I think it's not hard for me to buy the idea that like people who are the kinds of fans who will, go crazy online about every tiny little thing about Taylor Swift or whatever, that if Taylor Swift offered, her cold that she got recently, that those people would, or some of those people at least, would go for that. I have no trouble buying into that without having to learn more.
These are serious. These are more serious illnesses than a cold that they're injecting.
Well, it seems to vary. And there is one, I mean, the main plot here, we should mention Caleb Landry Jones, who is the star of this film. And, the main plot is that he has been smuggling out viruses by injecting himself with these viruses and then extracting them so he can sell them on the black market. And he injects himself with Hannah Geist, that's Sarah Gadon's character, her latest illness that turns out to be far more dangerous than he realized. And at one point he does mention, I think either he mentions or the black market, like butcher guy mentions, that it's illegal for them to use deadly diseases. So these always have to be like a cold or herpes that they give someone at the beginning of the film, or things like that are not going to kill you. So I feel like maybe it's like the flu. So it's a little more serious, but it doesn't seem to be too severe, really, for most people.
Well, it becomes pretty severe for him.
Right, because he's been breaking law. And they make the point that this is what would not be allowed.
Right, copy-coded. The diseases are
and not only right, but not only copying the disease, but even, licensing a disease that would kill somebody is not allowed. So, but Jason, what I want to know is, would you eat a Bruce Springsteen steak?
That's a good question, Josh. I really have to think about that. But it's Springsteen, so it'd probably be like a hot dog, and some ice cream, something really all American there or something, So
yeah, because that won't kill you, right? It'll just be a tasty bit of meat, but it'll come from your idol. So I
don't have the desire to eat any human being at this point in time, but it's a different world there. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, and you're not eating actual Springsteen, right? He's fine. He just is like donated the cell to grow a culture. I don't know.
Josh, which celebrity would you want to eat?
I should have thought about that more because I figured I would bring this up and then I didn't think about it, but I probably would not, just because I'm such a picky eater.
Yeah.
I would just be like, I don't want to try this new food. I don't care what celebrity it came from.
Yeah, I feel like Josh, we joke because I'm a big Springsteen fan, but he's very lean. I would maybe want something a little more fat on there or something.
Yeah. Springsteen would be gamey.
Exactly. You need someone, and I love all types of ethnic food, so we could go that route with it. There's a lot of different ways we could take this cell deli. The celly, if you will.
Yeah. They seem to be just selling very basic cuts of meat in this deli in the film.
It's probably a newer thing, and they haven't evolved to a Michelin star status yet.
Right. Although there is the one.
They really don't look good at all.
They look terrible. So they all look like they've expired and spoiled, and you shouldn't put them in your body.
Right. There's one scene where they go to what looks to be kind of a fancy restaurant where the butcher has been selling his meat, and presumably it's being made into more sophisticated dishes, but we don't really learn that much about it. So I guess the question is what celebrity chef would you want to cook your Springsteen meat?
Oh, what chef would I want? I mean, I think there's a number of chefs out there who could cook it. And I wonder if how vegan chefs would feel about this, because this is, like you said, not eating real human beings. So is this pro-vegan? This is faux human, right? This is impossible human, beyond human, or something like that.
Well, no, it's actually not, because those are replacements.
Right.
But it's
this
really
is built
more
out of the cell tree and everything.
Right. And that's something that, again, companies are now doing with animal cells. And I'm not sure how vegans feel about that stuff. Because that's something that's happening right now.
Yeah, we really blew it by not having a vegan as our guest on this one.
Yeah. But it is an interesting idea. So Dave, what celebrity do you want to eat?
Oh, I was hoping you would just skip over me because I don't have a good answer.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Josh,
we can move on from this disgusting topic.
Yeah. So look, here's some of the Cronenberg. I keep joking about the gels, but what I think he does is like that one review said, he's very meticulous with his shot selection, and there's a lot of slow motion shots that don't add anything. It's just I see you, you're walking by flowers. I get it. There's a lot of crazy extreme close-ups of, like I said, blood spurting, or, people's faces after their outbreaks and stuff like that. And, there's, of course, he's a big fan of these wild dream sequences also. So those are, I think, three things that you see repeatedly in his films, and the thing to me is, like I said, you get an hour in and you're like, okay, what else do you have to say? And I felt like with this one in Infinity Pool, there wasn't anything else to say. That just kept going. Whereas Possessor, I was worried it was going to lose me, but it did ratchet it up enough to be like, oh, that was a satisfying, third act.
Right. And I think Possessor of these has the most plot, has the most sort of structure in that way. But I think this one has a bit more than Infinity Pool, in the sense that there is sort of this ticking clock. It starts out in establishing the world, and maybe it's a little repetitive when you go okay, I get what is the deal here. And then when the main character injects himself with this deadly virus, then we get this ticking clock sense of he's going to die and he's got to figure out what's going on. And he gets drawn into the world of Hannah Geist, and he's sort of kidnapped / embraced by her team as they use him as kind of a guinea pig for them to figure out how to cure this disease. We get Malcolm McDowell as this doctor, and he has yet another exploration of this idea where he's got skin grafts from celebrities that have been placed on his arm and stuff like that. So I feel like there was a bit more plot urgency in the third act, where you were wondering, is this guy going to live or not?
There was also the bit about the other celebrity that they were kind of injecting people with that I felt like didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are more just background details, I guess.
Yeah.
But I thought it was okay to have things like that where it's just a way to establish the world, and we have all this Hannah Geist stuff, but there are other celebrities too, and they do this as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that that this doesn't really kind of maybe fit with later David Cronenberg stuff. But did you not think about Crimes of the Future when you were watching this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess what I meant with later David Cronenberg is sort of the direction that he was going before Crimes of the Future. Stuff like you said, like Eastern Promises and A History of Violence and even Cosmopolis and Maps to the Stars. I mean, that whole later portion of his career, A Dangerous Method, where he's making things that are more just like dark dramas and less horror, less sci-fi. And Crimes of the Future is clearly like a deliberate throwback to early David Cronenberg.
Which we all really liked last year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love early David Cronenberg, and I really like Crimes of the Future. I thought he made a lot of excellent films when he went in that more, I don't know if you want to call it mainstream, but I guess it is because he got like Oscar.
It's funny because for him, mainstream is experimental.
Right. And I thought that stuff was good, but I definitely did feel in that period of 15 years or so where he was making those like more just dark dramas that I missed some of his early body horror stuff. So I was happy to see him return to that with Crimes of the Future. And like I was saying, I feel like if you missed that, here's Brandon Cronenberg coming in and saying, hey, I got it. Here you go.
Right. I just, and it's unfair, but it's, it's hard not to compare, especially seeing these two so recently together, I just feel like that, something like Crimes of the Future is more fully formed and like the set pieces mean a little more when you get to them because the ideas are so have been so well thought out and everything. So this, like, I do think is, like I said, there's like a lot of method, but maybe of all the organs harvested, they needed to harvest a little more heart.
Oh, holding on to that one, are you?
No, I wasn't, Josh. I was.
All right. Well, hey, nice work.
Yeah.
I think also it's possible that at least at this stage, David Cronenberg has so much more experience working with actors.
Yeah.
And not that the performances in this movie are bad, but I do think there are more layers to this that could have been explored just as the characters go, that the characters are more just sort of tools within this sci-fi world and we don't understand them fully as people. And I think one great thing about Crimes of the Future is that it's this crazy weird ass world, but you have very distinctive people within it. And, obviously Viggo Mortensen and Kristen Stewart and Lea Seydoux are great actors, but I think part of that also is that David Cronenberg has so much experience working with them. And I think Brandon, you can see more. There are stronger performances in his films.
Yeah, totally. I 100% agree. Those are all really good points. Like the standout performance to me, I mean, look, it's always nice to see Malcolm McDowell, play something offbeat. But really, as a Joe Pink, who played Arvid, the deli harvester, he was an interesting character, I thought.
Yeah, Pingue, maybe. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously not a hugely budgeted film, as we say, although it's, I mean, 3 million Canadian dollars. That's not bad. That's not bad. Really.
I don't need that much to make a movie, Canadian or American. And
you're not a Cronenberg at all.
No.
But he's not getting big stars, I guess is what I'm saying in this film. But yeah, I mean, I think some of those performances in those smaller parts are decent and give you a sense of the world there and how people interact with it. But we could have learned more, I think, especially about the main character, Caleb Landry Jones's character, where we don't really understand much about his mindset or his emotions, I think, per se. And he's just sort of a vessel like he is in his job for transporting diseases.
Like, was he like Emily the criminal? Did he need to do this to pay off college loans or what's going on here? So
yeah, why does he risk himself? I mean, we see that even with the normal diseases or whatever, he's homesick all the time so that he can harvest these diseases from his own body, and doesn't seem to have any friends or relationships of any kind. So what is going on with that?
I think there was a missed opportunity also with the, every day you see the guys at work like line up to go to I guess the pharmacy or whatever it is, like a library, to take out specific viruses to inject in people, right?
Right.
And I think like had they gone in the direction of having those to be like more office space style conversations, like water cooler talk and just stuff about nothing, I think that break from like this relentlessness would have served it well and like added some really like valuable humor to it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of that when they're talking about the like celebrity rumors that they're buying into about the one celebrity, like, you know, her weird like anatomical quirks or whatever. Like, they say that she doesn't have a vulva or something. I mean, things that are obviously meant to be the equivalent of online rumors now or whatever. They were kind of amusing, but yeah, there definitely could have been a bit more humor. This is kind of a humorless film.
So, Josh, should we rate this thing out of 5 celebrity harvested cell steaks?
Yeah, let's do it. How many cell steaks do you want to give this?
It gets 2.5 for me. Like, I'm not hungry anymore, but the meal wasn't really that satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't disagree with a lot of your criticisms, but this is just my jam, this kind of film. And so I enjoyed it. I'm going to give it 3.5 cell steaks. It definitely fed my hunger for early David Cronenberg style films. This is like Brandon Cronenberg ingesting a David Cronenberg cell steak, I think is what's going on here.
I think you ingested an extra half a star in that to get it all the way to 3.5, but all right. So.
All right. Dave, how would you rate this?
I'm also going 3.5. I think there's a lot to chew on here.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back in a moment and talk about the legacy of Antiviral. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2012, we are talking about debut feature Antiviral from Brandon Cronenberg. And we've really been talking a lot about his other works already. As we said, he's made a couple more features. He made Possessor in 2020 and Infinity Pool this year, as we're recording just like this week, basically.
I mean, he didn't make it this week.
It came out this week. It's in theaters currently as we're talking about this in a shockingly wide release. This film for something that's like kind of off-putting, regardless of whether you like it or not. So, Jason, you feel like maybe he hasn't reached his full potential yet?
No, and that's not. I mean, maybe he has. Maybe this is the best. I don't know, but he's playing in the same pool, like on each one in a way, right? And I guess Possessor was the most realized to me. I mean, look, what I'm most interested is like he's had Mia Goth and Andrea Riseborough, right? And they're like, and Jennifer Jason Leigh too in Possessor, like, so he's got these like strong female performers and who deliver. And I thought Alexander Skarsgård's always good too. So I mean, I'm now talking about both the movies, but they both, like I said, Antiviral, Infinity Pool, just kind of like peter out like at a certain level, whereas like Possessor kind of was able to get over that hump for me and like give me an ending that satisfied me, or like just felt like it was a ride I wanted to stay on. Whereas the new one and the first one, I was just after an hour, I was like, man, you gotta kick this thing up somehow.
Yeah, I mean, again, I agree that Possessor was probably the strongest. And I think in part that is because it has the most plot, that it's not just like, here's some weird, crazy stuff. Like, I mean, the other movies have plot as well. And I think it takes a minute to get a handle on what that is, but then you can follow it. But Possessor really has this thriller, almost like spy movie structure to it that I think adds a lot there. And yeah, the performances are great. Andrea Riseborough, Jennifer Jason Leigh, who of course has also worked with David Cronenberg, and Mia Goth, of course, in Infinity Pool. And I thought that short film was fun. And I think maybe that, because it's only 10 minutes long, it solves some of your problems, or just doesn't have to address your problems because it's so short. It's just like, here's a weird idea at the end.
Yeah. And at the time of recording, that's on Criterion if you feel like looking that up. And
yeah. And I think it's cool. You know, if you like his style, it's definitely in that style.
But Josh, also that one had a crazy dream sequence in 10 minutes, crazy dream sequence, lots of gels and close-ups on one, bodily splatter, shall we say, and two, just extreme close-up on a bodily feature.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his quirks, and maybe he's just sort of exploring those for now, and maybe he'll expand later on as it goes on. He is working on a mini series based on the J.G. Ballard novel Super Can. And J.G. Ballard, of course, the author of Crash, which was adapted by David Cronenberg. So I don't know if his maybe working in a longer form genre will allow him to expand on his style, but certainly that doesn't make me think that he's moving further away from his father's style.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know the book just from what I've been reading about it and researching here, but another book by Ballard, Cocaine Nights, is kind of in the same vein, and it's all about what goes on. It feels like a White Lotus, like it's going to be Brandon Cronenberg's White Lotus, right? It's what goes on at a luxury resort and all the crazy stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, something like that. I'm not sure if it's a resort or it's like just an upscale residential area, but of course that makes you think of David Cronenberg's Shivers. So there's a lot of similarities going on there.
Yeah.
But I do think also, we're talking about the arc of David Cronenberg's career and how he had spent all this time kind of getting away from his early body horror and sci-fi stuff and making these more, not straightforward maybe, but a little more accessible, just like dark dramas for many years. And then he didn't make a movie for, I think, like 8 years in between Maps to the Stars and Crimes of the Future, when he came back and did something much more similar to his early work. And I wonder if he is in a way influenced by Brandon, seeing what he's doing and thinking, hey, you know what? I kind of want to get back to that. My son is stealing my thunder.
And I didn't think that at all. I thought maybe he was just influenced by the marketplace and how impossible it is to just make an adult drama right now.
Well, sure. But I think the style, the fact that it's not just an adult drama, it is very much a sci-fi horror movie in the vein of his earlier films and in the vein of what Brandon had been doing.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's hard to make an adult drama right now.
Right. So, yeah. It is. But it's he could have made, I see what you're saying, that he had to make a sci-fi horror thing because an adult drama was not really a possibility.
Right. It's not something that he's going to get funded at this point in time.
Yeah. And that may be true, but I'm just speculating. And Brandon Cronenberg's sister, Caitlin Cronenberg, has her own directorial debut called Humane, which looks to be also a sci-fi horror movie that's coming up, I think, later this year.
I love that. Keep it in
really
the family.
The whole family.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Caleb Landry Jones, who is the star of this film, is a fairly prolific character actor. I feel like he always, or maybe this is just the things that I've seen him in, but he very often plays these sort of weird, intense, off-putting people.
Yeah.
In various films. He's Dave, I know you're a big fan of the Softies. He's a heroin addict in their film, Heaven Knows What.
Was that their debut also, I think?
No, I think, is it Daddy Longlegs? Was that
Daddy
debut?
Longlegs was before that. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But that's really good too. And he's equally gross.
Yeah. He's been in some big films, The Florida Project, Get Out, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
X-Men, First Class.
Right. That was, I think, but before this was kind of his
breakout.
Earlier. Yeah, breakout. Exactly. I saw him, I think it was last year, as the title character in this film, Nitram, which is about a mass shooter, a real life mass shooter in Australia. And he's extremely off-putting in that film.
He won the best actor at Cannes for that in 2020, I think.
Yeah. And that is it's quite a performance. I have a lot of issues with that film, but he certainly is committed. And he played the robot in Finch opposite Tom Hanks, which is a slightly lighter role.
Josh, the two directors I saw he's got projects coming up with, Alex Gibney and Luc Besson, and I believe the Gibney movie is a narrative, not a documentary.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Yeah, he's certainly again sort of a distinctive, twitchy kind of performer.
If you watch him, you're like, hey, bank robber, murderer, serial killer, right? Like nothing says romantic lead, but hey, we'll see if there's a chance for him out there.
Yeah, maybe he'll get there. Sarah Gadon, also a pretty familiar face in indie films and also a lot of TV roles. As I said, she was in David Cronenberg's Cosmopolis around this same time. A movie last year that I really, really liked, another Canadian film called All My Puny Sorrows with Alison Pill, where they play sisters. She's excellent in that film, which is a super depressing movie.
That's the same woman who wrote the book for Women Talking, right?
Yeah, Miriam Taves. It's another one of her novels. And I actually like that movie better than Women Talking, but it also set in a Mennonite community, a very different kind of more modern Mennonite community, but that's kind of her own personal background. So she draws from that for her novels. And Jason, I know you're a big fan of Letterkenny, which she has been on a few seasons of that.
Yeah, I believe she played one of the skids, like she was there with Stuart and rolled. But Josh, I also marked down her work from the last season of True Detective, season 3. And she's in the upcoming Michael Mann movie, Ferrari, which should be pretty cool.
Yeah, I hope Michael Mann rediscovers how to shoot movies, because
taking it to Michael Mann.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole...
When did he forget how to shoot movies? Well, which one are you talking about?
Black Hat, probably, when he decided that the best way for his movies to look is like they're shot on ugly consumer grade digital video, I think. And he did the same thing with Public Enemies, which is a period drama. Anyway, it's a whole...
Because all that stuff he really like excelled at with like Collateral. But anyway, let's move on.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely a separate topic, but I'm sure we'll talk about Michael Mann eventually.
I hope so. He's great.
Yeah, he is often great. And Malcolm McDowell, we mentioned, he has a fairly small role in this, but I think this is a movie with not a huge budget, and Malcolm McDowell is definitely one of these actors where he will do whatever
he wants to work, man. So.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the list of things that he's done since this film, and it's like, wow, I've heard of almost none of this, but he occasionally is in bigger films. He played Rupert Murdoch in Bombshell. I guess he was in Father Stew recently with Mark Wahlberg. And I end up seeing all of these really low budget B movies for a VOD column that I write. And sadly, I probably most recently saw him in the conservative parody of Bernie Sanders called Free Lunch Express.
Great, perfect.
So that was an unfortunate role for him.
Maybe they should make him watch that movie with his eyes peeled open like Clockwork Orange or something.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't watch most of these films.
I last year on Halloween, I watched Paul Schrader's Cat People, and he's quite odd in that film. So,
He is. Yeah. I mean, he's certainly a distinctive presence that if you can hire him for your little B movie, it'll give it a jolt, more so than
he's in the next Paul Weitz movie called Moving On, which could be all right. So
yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's still good. He was on this kind of underrated Amazon series called Truth Seekers with Nick Frost that I thought was fun, playing Nick Frost's dad. So yeah, he's still got a good presence.
Josh, I am speaking of shows that I'm watching. I recently started watching Station 11, which I had missed in its initial airing, but since The Last of Us came out, I'm going apocalypse obsessed. And Joe Pingue is in that, and he's good in it. I think he plays like the leader of the traveling troupe, and he's good in that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I started watching that as well, and I think I must have not realized that he was there, or because I hadn't seen this yet. But yeah, he's a good, as you said, the kind of a good little presence here as a supporting character in this film.
Yeah. So the only other actor I had marked down was Nicholas Campbell, who plays Dorian Lucas, and lots of. He's in a movie called The Performance coming up, and The Dead Zone, Cinderella Man. Lots of movies you've heard of before.
The Dead Zone, a David Cronenberg film.
There you go.
Yeah, so really lots of crossover there, lots of crossover going on. So anything else you want to say on the legacy of Antiviral?
I had this quote from Brandon Cronenberg about it. I was delirious and was obsessing over the physicality of illness, the fact that there was something in my body and in my cells that had come from somebody else's body, and started to think there was a weird intimacy to that connection. Afterwards, I tried to think of a character who would see a disease that way, and I thought a celebrity-obsessed fan. Celebrity culture completely fetishizes the body, and so I thought the film should also fetishize the body in a very grotesque way. So I made 7 movies in a row like that. Okay, the last part I put in there, but the rest is his.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. But no, I mean, I think he's got a clear idea here, and I think the movie effectively expresses that. So I think it's a good movie, and especially as people are seeing Infinity Pool now, I think it's worth going back to check this film out if you liked Infinity Pool.
Yeah, I'm not against it.
All right. There you go. Jason's not against it. That's a ringing endorsement.
It's not the conservative Bernie Sanders parody, so I'm not against it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, definitely don't see that movie. I sadly have. So that is Antiviral, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can infect us online and on social media.
That's not a good thing to do, but you can look at us there. We're at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or Jay Harris Comedy on the socials. I got a website, Eat This Comedy Up. Also, Eat This Comedy in the Trivia Party on Instagram.
You can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com and at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, and at Signal Bleed on Twitter, and at Signal Bleed on Letterboxd. And you can listen to our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and check out Josh and I talking about Possessor a couple of years ago, and up soon, Infinity Pool.
So much Brandon Cronenberg content.
Yeah, you guys don't even need to go to the Brandon Cronenberg deli. You're eating on him so much.
We are. Jason, what do we have coming up in our next episode?
Josh, I thought I could escape. It is our biggest flop episode, and I don't have good memories of this one, Josh. It's John Carter versus aliens and Mars, or I don't know, what's it called, Josh?
It's just called John Carter, which was perhaps one of the problems with it that we'll discuss in that episode.
Yeah. Oh, the things we do for you, audience, the things we do for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll get into all of that. So tune in next time for John Carter, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.